This postpartum workout video is to be done after following the introduction videos, learning about your pelvic floor, whether or not you have a diastasis recti, and how to incorporate your rib cage into your core work. You can use this shorter first video as a part 1, and then when you want a longer workout, add a part 2 in order to increase the full body workout. We're going to begin using the medium-sized stability ball. Do have on hand your Monarch balls. If you don't have either of these props, we do have them for sale at monarchpilates.com or in the studio. You can also use a larger ball, a pillow. You can use a rolled up towel or blanket for the smaller balls. We're going to begin sitting onto the ball just as we learned in the postpartum video. You're going to situate yourself so the ball is centered right in the middle of your pelvis. Make sure this is comfortable for your knees and they're at a place that you can really allow your body to weight heavy and down into the ball. Stacking your torso so your rib cage is over your pelvis. If you have a mirror to the side, it's nice to check and look if those ribs tend to be flared forward, or if you can really imagine you're falling gently back in space. Take a notice of the pubic bone, tailbone, and 2 sits bones being your trampoline ring. Let that ring relax over the ball so that all the muscles that attach into the bones are soft. Leaving those superficial muscles relaxed, we're going to find the pelvic floor. Thinking of the marble cue, the jellyfish, the elevator, or the balloon, whatever cue works for you. As you sink a little heavier into the ball, you're going to engage through your pelvic floor, lifting up to your first floor of the elevator, and then releasing back down. Let's add the awareness of the lower abdominals drawing in as the pelvic floor comes up, and then gently letting it drop back down. Remember, we're not bearing down as if you're going to the bathroom, but more having that sensation of wrapping over the ball. As you sigh, let the breath be a secret. With a hand in front and behind, imagine those 2 hands are magnets that are gently drawing in as that pelvic floor comes up, so that you're making this conscious awareness of how the pelvic floor should co-contract with your deep core muscles, creating the core focus to be this upward movement rather than just pulling in hard through those abdominals. Those lower abdominals will absolutely engage and knit, but it has this in and up feeling. We'll bring the rib cage awareness into it now, placing the hands along the lateral sides of your rib cage. On the secretive inhale, those ribs expand with the pelvic floor. And as you sigh, think of elongating up through the torso and allowing all the pelvic floor and diaphragm to lift up, including the crown of your head more to the ceiling. On the inhale, avoid dropping back down, but rather trying to find this relaxed sense of tall, just letting the inside drop down and wide and back up. Now as you turn back to this practice at any point, if you lose this awareness, we're just going to add on to this exact core, strengthening, awareness building through different levels of challenge. We're going to start with a little bit of the pelvic floor bouncing. Use your feet to drive the movement rather than those hip flexors. You'll feel your quads engaging a little bit, but it's not the goal. Find the pelvic floor and put your hand in front, and think of the pelvic floor opening. So you can start out nice and small as you feel comfortable, and let that trampoline wrap around the ball. We are focusing on the release of the pelvic floor as you jump, and then letting the lift then come in naturally. Notice if your body's tending to lean forward, and if so, just gently fall back. Bringing some feedback from the ball into that pelvic floor, life and energy. Good. And starting to get some movement that incorporates this contraction. When you feel ready, you can change the focus to lifting up. And notice how those sits bones might want to clench or squeeze through the butt. And see if you can really let the outer superficial muscles stay relaxed and just get truly into that feeling of a balloon deflating in your body, lifting and contracting as you move. If you have a larger ball, this is a great way to sit on the ball, maybe even just in your living room or where it's comfortable, and get some movement happening. You can hold on to your children as you like if they're small enough, and do some small little pelvic floor bouncing. It doesn't have to be part of a group class or exercise, it can just be throughout your day. We're going to rest. sinking into that ball, and then bringing it behind you. Leaning against the ball, you want to situate it so that it really keeps you upright. You can put the ball against the couch if it's sliding away, or use a larger ball here. With your hands behind your legs, lean back and allow that low back to be gently curved. Opening that trampoline. The ball's no longer in contact with the pelvic floor, but you're going to imagine that it is. On your side, find the center point, hugging your marble or deflating your balloon, and engaging up to your first floor. We're going to get the rib cage expansion, pelvic floor expansion as you gently drop down, and a sigh as you gently pull up. So just moving the awareness of your breath and core control off of the ball and into this ab-like positioning. External rotation and wide is a little bit easier to find those pelvic floor muscles, so you can stay here. If you feel you want to try finding it parallel, go ahead and bring those legs in. Keep falling back against the ball. As you lift that pelvic floor up, careful that the knees don't fall in or out, but that you keep that nice parallel alignment. Dropping and widening the sits bones is what's more difficult here when those legs are parallel, because you really need to feel it coming from the pelvis rather than the knees being wide. Sigh as you drop heavy into that ball. Gently lift that pelvic floor, finding that co-contraction. You can work through your elevator lifts, going to your floor 1, your floor 2, your floor 3, holding it for a second as you continue breathing, and then releasing all the way back down to 1. Let's try putting a hand under those lower abdominals, supporting yourself nicely with the opposite hand. As you lift up to floor 1 and 2 and 3, you should feel a gentle contraction across your low waist, not gripping through those outer muscles, but really in that midline, as if you could very lightly knit the belly button in towards each other and up and back and release. Remembering that there's a tendency postpartum to want to clench everything in order to get the core working, and we want to stay out of that strategy and keep the jellyfish lifting. We're going to take them on our balls. You're going to place them underneath your pelvis. As you put them underneath your sacrum, your pelvis is going to be into a little bit of a tilted position. We'll start with your feet about hip width apart. Allow your low back to drop into the floor so that you have length through the low spine. As your knees open apart from each other, allow the pelvic floor to widen so those sits bones are open. As you bring your legs back together, avoid wanting to squeeze those sits bones and find that sense of pelvic floor lifting to come back in. You can put your hands onto your pelvis and note if that pelvis is wanting to prop that pubic bone up towards the ceiling. We don't want to tuck in order to bring the legs back in. You really want this internal motion being what's going to guide the legs back to midline. Remembering the exercise is not about the legs. The legs are the weight that are challenging your core and pelvic floor connection. Bringing awareness into the rib cage. Place your hands onto the ribs. Let the ribs drop heavy and wide as the legs open, shoulders drop back. Take a sigh as you're heavy in the hips. Visualize everything drawing up toward the crown of your head as those legs return towards center. Landing in parallel, staying here. We're going to hold the right leg still and stable in that parallel position as only the left leg opens out and comes back in. You want to imagine that you have two marbles here. The right marble is staying still and the left one is rolling out to the left. As you come back in, re-stabilize the right one to allow the left to return back into center. Place your hands onto your hip bones and then walk just inside. Are you clenching here? Soften the backs of your knees to relax at your fingertips a little bit and see if you can get a little bit more awareness through the midline and vaginal contraction versus clenching at your fingers. As you progress with this strength, you can add the challenge by lifting up the left leg. Begin with only lifting the heel. Think of dropping heavy through that toe and letting the inner thigh begin to just fold towards you and then release back down.
As you do the heel lift prep, notice how your body wants to change. What are your tendencies? Do you clench at the hip bones? Do you suck in too hard at the belly button? These are things that you wanted to establish and discover in the foundation videos. And then find the cues to change that habit as you increase your strength. Lifting the heel and then preparing to bring that leg in. You can fold the leg towards you, nice and easy. Remember, the exercise is not about the leg, it's about your core. As the leg drops back down, it's when the pelvic floor is going to lift back up. So widen sits bones, lift heel. Fold the knee in towards you as those sits bones continue widening. Heavy through both hips, relaxed in those inner hip muscles. Leg goes down, pelvic floor lifts. Lots of places you can focus. You can undo your habits you know you need to change. You can focus on the rib cage expansion and connection. You can focus on the sits bones widening as the leg comes up. And then pelvic floor contracting as the leg goes down. You can focus through those lower abdominals by the belly button and feel a gentle sense of drawing in order to bring that leg up. Setting the left leg down and going to the right leg, we'll begin with the right leg bent knee fallout, dropping that leg out to the side, and then engaging to bring the leg back in. Take this opportunity to really check in with your body and be in control of how you are moving. Stay in charge of what muscles are engaging in order to stay still. Moving out of a grip and go strategy into more of a finesse and subtle ease of movement. You can stay with that bent knee fallout or go to the heel lift. As just the heel comes up, you can check in with your body. Notice if the pelvis is tucking or maybe that left knee's falling out. Put some awareness into that left big toe. Let it help you. And as you are ready, bring that leg up. Keep the left leg parallel, marble engaged. Widening sits bones to bring the leg up. And then let the leg fall down, consciously lifting up to the diaphragm, up to the pelvic floor. Easy in the movement, easy in the breath. Your hands are your teachers, telling you where you need to put more focus. Avoiding the shortening and clenching and thinking more about that zipper cue, that the pubic bone needs to stay a little away from the belly button so that the muscles can knit right across the waist. Keep relaxing those shoulders down. Chin stays lifted so your focus is right up towards the ceiling. And then adding to the challenge, if you feel comfortable, we'll bring that right leg up. Hold on to the leg, let the hips drop heavy. Avoid clenching through the torso, but keeping that nice length. Left heel lifts first, and then pull that leg in. You may just have your feet here, balancing over the hip joints, noticing how you need to engage. You could always rest your feet up onto a larger ball, a wall, or a chair, doing what's comfortable for you. At some point, as you feel comfortable, you'll let those shins lift up towards the ceiling. And as the shins lift up, we want to keep that work in the core rather than in those hip flexors. We'll stay here as you widen through the rib cage. And as you exhale, engage pelvic floor, knit belly button. Feel the magnets drawing in. And find that core work for you in this more challenging position. Gently letting the leg down and the other one. We'll take the balls out and come on out. We're going to place them underneath you, right about at your shoulder blades. If you are feeling any strain in your neck or that diastasis is opening or pushing up, give yourself support with your head on the ball. This is going to allow you to start to get the flexion-like movement without compromising that diastasis. We're going to begin with the feet parallel and hip width apart. You're going to push gently through the feet to engage the pelvic floor and allow the pelvis to scoop. You're pressing your low back down into the ground as you go into this flat back position, and then release back to neutral. Check in if you're over squeezing those glutes or pumping the pubic bone up to the ceiling in order to get this movement. Remember, the sacrum is on a conveyor belt in your mind, and the conveyor belt is just gently pulling your pelvis towards the feet. The key here is your foot connection. The pelvic floor cannot work on its own. You need those feet giving you a opposition as you gently push them across the room and then consciously lift that pelvic floor up. Let's add rib cage awareness, placing your hands onto the ribs. You can expand the ribs to prepare. And as you exhale, let them secretly and subtly draw in as the pelvic floor pulls up, maintaining this nice length. So you should not have this big ridge of sucking in underneath those ribs. Here we're teaching the spine to move, asking those muscles in the back to elongate, preparing them for the sit-up that will be done with good form and correct muscles. Progressing from here, you're going to slide low enough down that you can put your hands behind your head. One hand will be a little bit easier, not causing that diastasis to lift. We're going to leave the opposite hand right onto your belly button and do the same scoops. Press through the feet, lengthen the spine, and feel the muscles underneath your fingertips knitting together as they pull in. Without the head on the ball, it starts to get intense for those ribs, and you'll need to make sure those ribs are not gripping to hold you up. If you go back to the ball, you can find that easier sense of release. When you feel ready, you may put both hands behind the head, but knowing that does increase the challenge. Keep that ease of the rib cage so those ribs are drawing in as you scoop. We're going to come to your neutral. Now we are not going to move the pelvis, holding it still without squeezing sits bones. We're going to drop the rib cage into the negative space and allow your breasts and head to come forward just the tiniest bit. When you release back, feel that zipper cue, that the pubic bone and the breastbone are staying away from each other. Keep them long and allow everything in the middle to naturally draw towards midline as the focus comes from the rib cage dropping to come up. So we're asking for length in the back, for the rib cage to move away from the pelvis, and the pelvic floor to lift up as you move, rather than the pubic bone. So with one hand behind the head, one hand either onto your rib cage and your stomach, you're sinking the sits bones, you're dropping the ribs, you're beginning to move into a controlled flexion sit-up movement that keeps pelvic floor active, knits the diastasis, and integrates the ribs. You'll notice you don't have to move very much, and this is more subtle control of the body, but nice feedback. Maybe you'll get a little bit of shaking from those abdominals as they really begin to turn on. This is an excellent exercise to throw in throughout your day. You can put a towel, a sweatshirt, a pillow. If you're on the floor with your child, you can come down here and play with them. They don't even need to know that you're working on your core work. Sign and lift. We're going to take the same movement into your larger ball. As you bring the mid-sized ball behind you, place it just behind your rib cage. You want to place it low enough that there's support for you and those abdominals are not pressing out. You're going to lean back onto the ball, holding onto the back of your legs. Feeling that same movement coming from the back of the rib cage. Head is nice and long. We're going to sink those ribs and pull your chest forward, gently coming towards your legs, and then releasing back down. As you go through this motion, you can put a hand onto those lower abdominals. Feel the hips sink. Integrate the pelvic floor, letting that pelvic floor and diaphragm come up towards the crown of your head as you move forward. We're asking your spine to go through this nice wheel-like motion as if the spine is rolling to come up towards the ceiling.
Remember, the feet are important to give you that nice control and integration. And as you feel ready, you may place one hand behind the head, one hand behind the legs. At any point, you can check into those lower abdominals and make sure that transversus is knitting. And as you want to go both hands behind the head, I recommend you sliding your bottom a little bit further away so you have more support. This will allow the low back to stay dropping down into the floor as you go through some gentle flexion. Feet connect, pelvic floor lifts, belly button draws together, chest goes towards your legs. Each and every rep gets your full focus with a nice sigh, finding your shake with whichever positioning and version feels good for you. Practicing these exercises and then finding times to sneak them in throughout the day. And then if you would like more of a workout, you can go on to the next level video.